But speaking of drama, nice little segue there. There's been some releases in the wrestling world, and usually it's just WWE
Yeah.
releasing anyone that they please at the time. But we actually have some stuff from AEW to get through as well.
Mhm.
So, with that being said, I'll quickly run through the names that we've got on the release list, and then we'll get into our thoughts on that as well. So, we'll start with WWE. So, we've had Duke Hudson, Paul Ellering and the Authors of Pain, Cedric Alexander, Sonya Deville, Blair Davenport, Karl Anderson and Luke Gallows, Isla Dawn, Giovanni Vinci, and Elektra Lopez have all been released in the matter of days
Mhm.
in this week. So, yeah, quite a lot of names there. Some that I'm sure a lot of you will recognize, and maybe a couple who maybe you're not too familiar with. But again, I'm pretty familiar with all of them, in all honesty.
Well, all of which, for apart from Duke, I mean, all of which are main roster people. You know, it's usually there's a mix between
Hmm.
NXT and main roster people, but this is just all main roster.
Hmm.
With a lot of the reports coming out that the reason why is because they're actually making room for the NXT talent to sort of make their way up,
Yeah.
and make room on the roster. But yeah, it was we haven't I felt like since Triple H taken over, we've had drabbles of releases. We've never
Yeah.
really had like a full blown here's a bunch of releases.
Yeah.
I could be completely wrong, but it's definitely not felt like that. Um,
Yeah, it's not
yeah,
been like what you would usually see under the Vince era where it
yeah,
was 15, 20 names randomly on any given Monday could go.
yeah,
This has definitely been the biggest pot of wrestlers that have been released, I think. You are
yeah,
right there.
yeah. It's a weird. It's a weird. It was one of those where it caught everyone off guard. There was no like, oh, by the way, there's going to be some because Duke Hudson happened, and everyone was like, oh, that's a shame. And what no
Yeah.
one expected was that later on, that would mean that more was on its way. Um, yeah, it's. I mean, I guess we'll go through the AEW ones as well, and then we can have a big
Yeah.
overall view of everything. Then,
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of AEW, there's not as many releases, but probably I would say bigger names, I would say, than maybe the ones that got released for WWE. You had Malakai Black, Miro, and Ricky Starks all released from AEW. Again, big names there, left, right, and center.
mm.
So, yeah, again, thoughts on the releases as a whole for both WWE and AEW? Like, are you surprised by the names mentioned, or
I'm I'm not, and I am, and that's a terrible answer. But in terms of AEW, I'm not at all.
yeah,
Looking at it, Malachi Black, it's been very obvious he's not been happy for a while, and it's very much looked like he's been on his way out. Obviously, that one is more of a contract ending than a full blown release, but he's still obviously been let go of his contract. Then having Miro go, who hasn't wrestled since the end of 2023.
mm,
Funnily enough, his final ever match was against Andrade,
yeah,
which was Andrade's last match in AEW. So that's quite an interesting one there. And Miro's a very much a weird one in AEW where like everything looked like it was going in a positive direction. The next thing he'd be taken off TV, and then he wouldn't appear for a while, then he would appear, and then he'd disappear. It was very weird. There's been a lot of creative differences. I mean, you can blame one or the other. I mean, very similar can be said about Ricky Starks. It felt like the sky was the limit. Obviously, then when ever since sort of Cody left, everyone's always murmured that maybe he'll make the jump.
yeah,
Then they gave Ricky Starks. I think they gave him. I could be wrong, but I think they might have given him the Owen Hart Cup, but I can't remember.
mm,
But they definitely gave him a tournament win,
yeah,
and he
yeah, they
got
did.
big loads of pyro, and it was like quite comedic how much pyro he got. And then it just felt like, I don't know, just things just seemed to tail off. They went from being really hot on him to nothing. And again, there was apparently creative differences. He asked for his release last year. He was told no. He then wasn't used on TV. And then I think eventually they've just decided, fine, we'll release you. In terms of WWE, I mean, it's the sad reality is not one surprised me. really. The only one possibly surprising me was Sonya Deville. The main reason being I've always seen Sonya Deville as a WWE woman. I've never seen her as anything else. I've always thought that she was going to be in that company for pretty much the rest of her career. She proved time and time again she can do it in the ring. She can do it outside the ring in a managerial role. And she can also do it as a GM role as well. She was almost the complete package of, almost in a similar sense to someone like Natalia, who's just a safe pair of hands who is just never going to leave. I really felt that Sonya was the same, so that one really sort of surprised me. In terms of everyone else, I mean, unfortunately, they don't. They've not been used on TV. If they have, it's been sparingly.
Yeah.
With very little push. I mean, the one that excites me the most, which is weird to say with releases, and obviously we wish them all the best. The one that excites me the most, and I think is actually a good thing for this person, is Cedric Alexander.
Yeah.
I think Cedric's about to have the run of his career. Cedric's still quite very young, and he's got a certain faction in AEW called the Hurt Syndicate that's just waiting for him. And I think AEW can let him off the leash, similar to what we've seen with Ricochet recently, where he's sort of been able to go. In my honest opinion, I think the sky's the limit with Cedric. I've always liked Cedric. Cedric's character work is very underrated. People just look at him in the ring. He's got a very impressive finisher in the lumbar check. He is very, very good, and people forget that he's actually very good at the character work as well. And yeah, I think the sky's the limit for him. Personally, I think he will not have any trouble whatsoever. I don't think many of these people will, but I think with him, it's actually a beneficial move rather than you've been released from your contract type thing. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I think the ones that I've been surprised by were probably the same as you with Sonya, because again, she was in the faction with Shayna and Tony Storm. Not Tony Storm.
Not Tony Storm. She's at a different company.
She's a different company. Who am I
It
thinking
is
of?
Zoe Stark.
Zoe Stark, that's the one. ST, that was what was tripping me up. So with her being in that faction, I was thinking, oh well, they're probably cruising along and doing their thing. And Cedric was sort of used in and out of time. He wasn't really there consistently. And I felt for a while, like you say, with the faction essentially waiting for him in AEW, it was kind of only a matter of time before he ended up there, probably. But everyone else, we've not really seen them. And again, Karl Anderson, Luke Gallows is a strange one to me, because not in the sense that they've been released, but in the sense of how it's not worked out for them either time they've been there. Like, they've been obviously backups to AJ through different periods of the timeline, but like they've never really been utilized properly, and I don't know why, because obviously we've seen them in New Japan and on the indies, and they've been great for the most part. Like, there was a reason why WWE signed them. But yeah, everyone else, it's not really a surprise. In terms of AEW, I think the natural reaction to the three of them is that they're going to be in WWE at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is probably the one I'm most excited about, is seeing Malakai back in WWE, because I do think Triple H will use him properly, and we will get the NXT version of Black that we've seen. And I think if we get a main roster run with him in, we're going to have some pretty spectacular moments and matches that really we should have seen in AEW, but they, like a lot of wrestlers, have underutilized them at various points. Again, it's the same with Miro. I think with Miro, we could see a proper Rusev run. Whether he goes back to being Rusev or if he comes in as Miro, we'll see.
I am torn with this one, and I said it to my friend. I've got a feeling he might not come back.
Well, there's every chance, yeah.
I remember hearing rumors in that, like, basically he wasn't that interested in carrying on, and he was quite happy with his life outside of wrestling, and that could just be that he lost his passion while in AEW and he'll regain it in WWE, or it could be that he is actually pretty much done. As I said, he hasn't wrestled since 2020, end of 2023. is that because he doesn't want to, or is that because there was no creative plans? I don't know, but I think, it wouldn't surprise me if Miro just goes off now into the distance.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I do think the lure of being used properly by Triple H and Co will be a big pull. Like, I think if they come up to him and say, "This is the plan," with the way WWE are at the minute and how as hot as they are, that's going to be very difficult to turn down. And I know there was discussions with Black maybe being discontented with what was going on at AEW and maybe looking to call it a day for a while. But again, WWE is its own machine right now, and it's on a whole other level in terms of success and sort of popularity that, again, even like a couple of years in there on a decent run, you're probably getting remembered for years to come. So, yeah, I do think there's a big pull there for both of them. Whether we see them will remains to be seen. One guy I would expect, obviously, is Ricky Starks to be in WWE by the summer, if not sooner. We may not see him because of no compete clauses or whatever. I don't know how it works, obviously, in terms of if your contract runs out or if you've been terminated. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but Starks will be in there sooner rather than later. He's got people in the company who will vibe for him, and he's already known well by a lot of people. You've got Punk and Cody on your side, two of the biggest players right now in WWE. You know, he'll be there sooner rather than later, I would imagine.
And he'll go straight to NXT. I think that makes the most sense. Go to NXT, build his name and character, make it familiar to the WWE fans, because even the WWE fans who keep an eye on AEW might have forgotten what his character is and forgotten what he's like. It's not like he has been wrestling with AEW for, recently and now is coming back. This, like a Penta, for example, who, everyone was really excited for and had been wrestling recently for them. This is someone who's been away for a long time, whose character isn't as easy as this is the greatest luchador. Just watch what he does in the ring. Ricky Starks is a deeper character than that. And I think putting him on NXT, which has a very slim main event division right now, especially if Trick Williams goes up to the main roster, I think that is where Ricky Starks can shine for just over a year or so and then can make his way up to the main roster.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, being under the wing of HBK for a year is no bad thing for any up-and-coming wrestler. So, yeah, it'll be great to see what happens with them. Any more thoughts on the releases there, Bragster, or was there anything else you had?
No, I just think that, obviously, we all want to see them do really good stuff, and this is nowhere near the end for these guys. This is, look at Cody, look at Drew, look at Punk. These are guys who stepped away, came back, and I know Punk's different, but they still stepped away. They were still gone from their contract and then ended up coming back. This is, this is not the end of the road. This is, for a lot of these people, especially the younger ones, like the Vincis, the Isla Dawns and stuff, the Elektra Lopez, this is just the beginning. They've just got to find the thing that then, gets them back into that spotlight and into a big company again, if they don't go straight into one.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, hope, it's sad, but hopefully this gets turned into a positive 6 months or so down the line when we see them all doing really good stuff on the indies and in the bigger promotions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, the biggest example I can sort of point to in recent memory is one that surprised me that he got released was Baron Corbin. Like, he got released, and I was kind of like, well, I understood it to a certain extent, but even then, I kind of was like, well, look at his recent run with Braun in NXT, and then the reactions he was getting on the main roster. And I think the problem with Corbin was that he got sullied a little bit with Vince's booking, and he didn't really get to show what he could do. And then sort of that year span when he did, gave him that popularity, but then he got sort of cut off when they didn't have anything else for him. So, and he's going to GCW and wrestling there and fighting in Bloodsport and all that stuff. And he says he wants to keep doing it. And I fully believe he's one of those that'll be back at some point. But I think the next year or so he'll go out and spread his wings a bit. So hopefully they can follow a similar path to him and take it from there.